All right, very pleased to be joined now by Frank Seravalli, who is brought to you by Wendy's Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool game. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year and Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning. Download the Wendy's app and score yourself 150 bonus reward points on your first order and grab a sweet victory from the mouthwatering jaws of defeat, along with some fresh, never frozen beef. Sign up to play Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool Fantasy to win weekly prizes like the spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. And the man himself from Daily Faceoff joins us now. Frank Seravalli, thanks for doing this. How you doing today?
I'm good, but I've gotten smoked in the Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool again. I made it to day 2, and I was just trying to make it to Wednesday, and the Boston Bruins failed me last night against the Bolts.
I won 1 week, as I've said many times on this show, and I got my points, and I went to, it's a good amount of points. Like, if you win, they really do reward you. Like, I got enough for 2 Baconators on there.
Oh,
it's yeah,
like that's like that. You can already hear my arteries clogging.
Yeah, it's a tough game.
I wouldn't know anything about this because I never win. Like, it is legitimately hard. Every night there's 10 options, and mostly 2 or 3 win at the most.
Yeah, fair enough. Canucks are gonna be looking for some more wins, and I think they're gonna do that by signing Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel is working out in Abbotsford. Obviously, we saw the photos from YVR last night. Frank, what can you tell us about this situation, and what do you think the Canucks are looking for with this workout with Phil Kessel?
Well, what they're looking for is to see what kind of shape he's in. You know, it's great to tell everyone through your agent, oh, this guy's been training so hard, working out. You got to actually see it with your own eyes, see where his game is. It's been a long time since he played any form of competitive hockey. And so that's one part of it. And see how sharp his skills are. What does his shot look like? Skating's one thing. Is his passing on time? Is it on the tape? Little things like that I think they're just looking to see how close of a facsimile is the current Phil Kessel to someone who's typically, in full game shape, and how far away would he be from getting there?
Frank, what do you think the appeal is from the Canucks perspective in adding Phil Kessel? Obviously, they just went out and acquired Elias Lindholm. And you wonder at this point if Phil Kessel really has enough to be a full-time top 6. And you also have the bottom 6, which may not necessarily be the best fit for Kessel. What's the appeal from the Canucks perspective here?
Well, Harm, the appeal is easy. We have a team that we believe we're in contender mode. We've just added a huge piece. Assets are limited. Cap space is limited. And we could potentially basically fill a void on our roster using a free space on the bingo card. I mean, that's about as attractive as it gets. And then you consider the relationships that are in play. Rick Tocchet, the Phil Kessel whisperer from Pittsburgh, his same GM, and now the same relationship with Patrick Allvin. Like, I think that all matters. Do I have authentic doubts about his ability to contribute to this team? I do. I think the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights went 18 games in the postseason last year where they said our lineup is better without Phil Kessel in it, that to me would tell me a lot. And I think it probably did tell teams a lot around the league this year, and why he remained unsigned or remains unsigned through Valentine's Day. But I also see from the Canucks perspective that when you look at your lineup card, if you're Rick Tocchet and you see Nils Höglander on your top line and Pius Suter playing wing on your second line, to think that this team can actually get better, I think that's a fallacy. And I think one of the true hallmarks of this team and where they've been is they're not leaving any stone unturned. Yes, they're not leaving any stone unturned. And if that means giving Phil Kessel a shot or not, at least they're trying to do something to continue to improve this team on the margins.
The trade deadline is a few weeks away. If this works out, Frank, if it works out and they sign Phil Kessel, do you think that changes the trade deadline strategy at all? Were the Canucks even going to be big fish hunting for another winger coming up with this trade deadline? Like, what does this all mean for the Canucks trade deadline plans?
No, I think they were mildly intrigued about the possibility without having to spend, and that's part of it. And I think from a pure deadline perspective, would this mean that they're done? Probably at the forward position, I would think that's the case. especially with the versatility that we know that Lindholm has to play on the wing, that you've made your big ad. But I still think that this team could use at least one more defenseman to help prop up this blue line and to put them in a spot where when you have a deep playoff run, the bullets start flying, that you are really in a great spot to contribute if someone goes down.
Frank, this seems like a complex deadline when you factor in the lack of sellers, considering how many teams are close to the playoff bar, even just the lack of impact players, cap logistics, and a lot of teams being in trouble there. What Western Conference contenders, with all those factors in mind, do you expect to be most aggressive at the deadline?
So I want to quibble with one notion of what you're saying. I agree. I think the market is thin, but I don't think we're short on sellers. I think we know enough now to know that Seattle, with their recent slide, we know the Flames are selling. That's not changing even with the games that they won on their East Coast swing. The Blues, the Preds, the Yotes. The Yotes have been bad the last few weeks. There's enough teams that are in that pool, and then go out east and include the Flyers. Teams that are even, right at, if not in the playoffs, knocking on the door of them, that they've sort of made this determination that this isn't their year, and or that they're taking the long view. So I think we have enough sellers. I just think there's so much baggage on some of those teams, players with term, guys that aren't impact pieces, heavy prices when it comes to the trade deadline in general, that's sort of what helps grind the market to a halt. But to answer your overall question, I would say, which Western Conference teams are we waiting to make a move? Colorado. I think on a lower scale, Dallas, who kind of quietly is leading the division. Winnipeg's made their strike. And then I think you've got Edmonton and Vegas. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Kings do something, but we had a fun little segment today on Daily Faceoff Live where it was like you could hand out a card to a Valentine and you had to break up with one. And for me, the team that I broke up with was the Kings. Like, I'm sorry, like getting shellacked. It's one game by the Sabres. Like, come on. You've changed coaches, panic move. You've got a talented roster. Something's clearly off. Your goaltending is no good. I'm out on the Kings.
Fair enough. We've been out on the Kings for a while, especially me. I don't like Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'm not sure if you've heard, but we won't start on that. But
I know who your real crush is on Valentine's Day.
Noah Juulsen?
Noah Juulsen.
Yeah, how much national attention is he getting? Like, are GMs just talking about this guy lots right now?
Yeah, zero. Zero national attention.
How long until he enters the Norris conversation?
The answer is never.
Do you pick which PHWA members get a vote? Because I've had a vote for the past 2 years. Oh,
I
okay.
have a say, yes.
So I better be careful before throwing out Noah Juulsen for Norris?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that would make you an unauthentic voter.
Ineligible to vote. Fair enough. Frank, on your trade targets board, we see Noah Hanifin, we see Chris Tanev, two defensemen, obviously. I watched your matchmaker segment today. You've got Hanifin going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Do you still think the Canucks might be in on anyone on your trade targets board right now?
I could see them being in on Tanev. I don't know this for certain, but it wouldn't shock me if the Canucks are one of the teams that would be willing to pay a second round pick for Tanev. And I think that would be a real nice price. Like, I think it's not going to be that far off than that. I don't think the Canucks are one of those teams that could stretch and say, hey, if we go on a deep run, the second could turn into a first because of the capital that they've already given up for Lindholm. And I think if you're the Flames, that's probably what you're really looking for. But I do think that there's probably a pretty fair amount of interest in Tanev. They'd have to get to a spot where you would make the money work.
Frank, what do you expect from the Tampa Bay Lightning? Because they're in an interesting spot. Steven Stamkos is a pending UFA at the end of the season. The core is getting a little bit older. Mikhail Sergachev is out with an injury now, yet they're still a good team this year. Do you expect them to be in the market for some of these higher profile rental defensemen like a Tanev or like a Sean Walker? Or do you expect them to perhaps address the need in a different way?
I don't expect them to address it from a rental perspective because it hasn't been in their nature. Like, go back and look at Julien Brisebois' playoff or deadline playbook, and it would tell you whether it's Tanner Jeannot or Brandon Hagel, or he ended up signing Nick Paul long-term. The players that he's brought in, for the most part, have been part of their long-term view, and that's been their way to justify really spending significant future assets. I mean, look at the Jeannot deal. History hasn't been very kind to it over the last year, but a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, I mean, that's like the majority of your draft board for an entire year. And yeah, they have him for a couple years, but he doesn't seem to be worth anything like the price that they paid. And I think they've reached an inflection point of, we've had a lot of success. We've won 2 Stanley Cups here. We've got a core that when they get into the postseason can make noise. This East is as wide open as it gets. And some people might hear me saying this and say, well, why wouldn't they load up? But they don't have any more assets to do it. They don't have a deep prospect pool. At some point, you're going to have to just go into the playoffs with exactly what you've got. And I think if you listen closely to what John Cooper is saying the last few weeks, it almost feels like he's telling or broadcasting to everyone that they're not a team that really deserves to go out and spend in a big way to add.
What were your thoughts on the Morgan Rielly incident and subsequent suspension?
I love the slap shot into the empty net.
Likewise.
I love the response. I thought a cross check to the face was over the top and deserved to be suspended. I thought 5 games fit. And there's been this idea floating around on social media the last 48 hours of make hockey violent again. But my thing is, that's probably a bridge too far, but why can't we make hockey spicy again? Like, it's before your time, Quads, but growing up as a hockey fan in the 90s, like, you couldn't blink without Matthew Barnaby being on SportsCenter one night for some ridiculous thing that he did to an opponent. It happened all the time. Hockey needs villains. They need heels. They need people who do dumb stuff. And we've been talking about it, and people have gotten nauseous talking about it because it's been such a big topic of conversation with the team from the self-proclaimed center of the hockey universe. But I am here for any chaos that could ensue.
There's a lot of chaos. There's going to be a lot of chaos in the playoffs, and we'll keep talking to you in the lead up to that and the trade deadline. Frank, thanks so much for doing this. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See you guys. Hey, where are you and Juulsen going to dinner tonight?
I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
Maybe Italian Kitchen. I walk by that place all the time. You've been to Vancouver before. You've ever been to Italian Kitchen?
I have not.
I haven't either. Have you?
No.
All right, we got some research to do. Seems like a nice place.
You and Noah do, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
I went to a good sushi place in Toronto, though, and they said that their flagship location is in Vancouver. So I'm itching to get out there because I'm still thinking about that sushi.
Yeah, there's good sushi out here. I'm not a big sushi guy, but yeah.
MIKU?
Yes.
Oh, you've heard of it? Good.
Yeah, popular among Canucks players.
Oh, well, there
Yeah,
you
in
go.
Yaletown.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm not a big sushi guy, but yeah. They got it at Safeway. All right.
Yeah, that doesn't count. That's
This guy eats gas station sushi, okay?
oh.
Nothing wrong with a
Quads.
good gas station California roll.
What are we gonna do with you, Quads?
I don't know. We'll see. All right, Frank, thanks for doing this.
See you guys.
Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.